Kérem vigyázzanak, az ajtók záródnak.
Oh, you're not living in the 8th district, are you? That's a very sleazy area, said some Hungarian acquaintances who lived in a villa on the posh Buda side of Budapest. But they hadn't seen sleazy. They hadn't lived in a high-rise on the outskirts of Moscow. For me, coming to Praterutsa represented an upgrade. If Putin's Russia was like Coca-Cola, then you could say that Hungary under Viktor Orban was Diet Coke, more European and civilized, less dangerous and absurd. On the street, I didn't fear the Rendersheg in the same way I feared the police in Moscow. Budapest was relaxed and inviting, so I went out to explore the environs of Praterutsa. Going in one direction, you soon came to Korvin Sétán, a bright pedestrian precinct with cafes and flower shops, leading to a shopping mall and then out onto the Grand Boulevard. There was nothing sleazy about that. But going in the other direction, up towards the Kerepesi Cemetery, there was a warren of narrow back streets that did look darker. The pre-communist apartment buildings were beautiful but crumbling. And here I was as likely to meet Roma people as Magyars. Not that I feared the Roma gypsies, they never did me any harm. So it was true that the 8th district was divided into two parts, both architecturally and perhaps socially. One part was modern and aspiring to the middle-class lifestyle. The other was poorer and completely unrenovated, but gloriously atmospheric. Magdolna Utca, Louisa Utca, Matyas tér. These were some of my favourite corners of the 8th district. On Danko Utca, I discovered the John Wesley Theological College, whose rector, Pastor Gabor Iványi, was famous for his kindness. He had a long, flowing white beard and looked like Father Christmas. During the refugee crisis in 2015, he had taken the humane step of personally delivering Portaloo toilets to desperate asylum seekers camping in fields. The college also ran what it called a heated corridor, a very long room with bunk beds down both sides that provided shelter to the Hungarian homeless when the weather turned inclement. The 8th district drips with history. Many of the buildings are still pockmarked with bullet holes from the uprising of 1956, when Hungarians fought bravely, but ultimately unsuccessfully, to free themselves from Soviet domination. I was interested in this because I myself was born in 1956. My grandma's neighbour when I was growing up in Yorkshire was a woman called Mrs. Andrassy. Well, that's how we pronounced it, but it should have been Andrassy. I didn't realise it at the time, but she was probably one of the many refugees who fled Hungary after the uprising. It was a bloody business in which nearly 3,000 Hungarians and 700 Soviet soldiers died after Moscow sent in the tanks. On Republic Square, now named after Pope John Paul II, Hungarian rebels strung secret policemen up on the lampposts. They identified them from their standard issue puppy shit coloured shoes. It was unfortunate if you were an innocent person who just happened to own a pair of these nasty mustard yellow shoes. Or so I was told by a 1956 veteran. At Corvin Kurs, a horseshoe-shaped area before the main boulevard, Hungarian rebels were able to hold out because the lumbering Soviet tanks couldn't get in. Now there's a little statue to the lads of Pest, where people lay flowers and young musicians busk with guitars. The statue reminds us that many of the Hungarian fighters were just teenagers, and they faced rough justice afterwards. One of them, Peter Mansfeld, was only 17 when he was sentenced to death. He was held in jail until he came of age and hanged just after his 18th birthday. The years immediately after the uprising were harsh, but then the Hungarians got their famous goulash communism when they had more freedom than others in the Soviet bloc. Communist rule came to an end in 1989. The 1990s were difficult, but by 2004, Hungary had made a lot of progress and joined the EU. So now, in many ways, you have a sense that Hungary is a normal country. Except on the scheduled days of lomtalanítás, or garbage disposal, when residents are allowed to put large items of household junk out onto the streets, and rag and bone traders, often Roma, pick through the broken furniture, smashed porcelain and faded pictures in the hope of finding treasure before the unwanted rubbish is finally taken away. It was on one of these days that I was taking a stroll through the back streets of the 8th District. I was picking my way carefully through bags of old clothes, shoes and bedding piled up on the pavement. Suddenly, from a 5th-floor window, a sofa came flying out and landed with a mighty crash on the sidewalk. It landed literally a few feet from my face. God! Just a bit closer and I could have been squashed like a bug. I could have died in a most unfortunate freak accident. I caught my breath, recovered from the shock, and walked on. Now, what was I saying about Russia? And Hungary somehow being less dangerous and absurd?
This train terminates here. Goodbye.